Great. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. All right, can you hear me? My name is Greer Luce. I'm the Curator of Education and Public Programs here at Morven, and I'm so excited to welcome you to our 2024 Grand Homes and Gardens series. Thank you all for being here. This year's theme is Stately Homes, Exploring U.S. Governor's Mansions and Gardens. Grand Homes, as you may know, is a very special series to us here at Morven. It was started as a chance to learn about and experience, no matter the circumstances, beautiful homes, enchanting gardens, and fascinating stories from across the country. We continue the tradition this month, visiting 4 United States governor's mansions in New Jersey, Virginia, Hawaii, and Maine. Tonight is no exception. We will be traveling just down the road to Drumthwacket, New Jersey's governor's mansion. Drumthwacket is sort of like a sister site to Morven in a lot of ways. Morven, as you may know, is New Jersey's first governor's mansion, and Drumthwacket is its current governor's mansion. So when we give tours at Morven, you can't give a tour without mentioning Drumthwacket. However, tonight we will learn that Drumthwacket has its own very unique history, one that spans decades and has resulted in a truly magnificent home and gardens. I'm going to hand things over shortly to our fabulous sponsors for tonight's program to share a few words. But before I do, I wanted to extend a huge thank you to Robin Brenner, the Executive Director of the Drumthwacket Foundation. Robin has been incredibly generous with her time in helping to arrange tonight's program and the optional in-person tours of Drumthwacket occurring later this week, which we'll see some of you at. I'd also like to thank Kathy O'Hara, the hospitality manager here at Morven. Kathy develops a menu of refreshments uniquely inspired by each program in this series. She's a big part of what makes this series so special every year. Yes, a round of applause for Kathy. So I will be back shortly to introduce tonight's speaker, but before I do, I hope you will join me in welcoming our wonderful sponsors. This year's series sponsor is Bryn Mawr Trust, and tonight's program about Drumthwacket is sponsored by Mrs. G's Appliances. So first, I'd like to welcome Brian Taylor from Bryn Mawr Trust to the stage.
Thank you, and good evening. My name is Brian Taylor. I'm the Wealth Director for the Princeton office of Bryn Mawr Trust, and I'd like to welcome all of you to the first of 4 of Morven's Grand Home and Garden Speaker Series. Before we immerse ourselves in the grandeur of these historical homes, let me share why Bryn Mawr Trust is thrilled to partner with Morven for this extraordinary series. At Bryn Mawr Trust, community is at the heart of everything that we do, and we've been deeply rooted in our communities for over 200 years. When we learned of Morven's dedication to preserving and showcasing the stories behind our country's prestigious governor's mansions, we knew we had a kindred spirit. These mansions stand as testaments to our shared history, and Morven brings their stories to life. Our decision to align with Morven isn't just about our sponsorship. It's about fostering a deeper connection with the rich tapestry of our community. The Grand Homes and Gardens Speaker Series, featuring these 4 iconic governor's mansions, offers the unique opportunity to delve into the narratives that have shaped our country's history. By supporting Morven in this endeavor, we've invested in the celebration of our history and our local identity. This partnership signifies a commitment to ensuring that our extended community has the chance to explore, appreciate, and take pride in the history that surrounds us. Together with Morven, we embark on a journey to discover the unique stories and architectural splendors of our governor's mansions. As we begin this series, know that Bryn Mawr Trust is here because we believe in the importance of community, cultural preservation, and education. So let us revel in the stories, marvel at the grandeur, and celebrate the historical treasures that make our country truly extraordinary. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brian. And now I'm very pleased to introduce Debbie Schaefer from Mrs. G's Appliances.
Hello, everybody. What a wonderful turnout. So again, my name is Debbie Schaefer, and I'm the CEO of Mrs. G, a family-owned and nationally recognized retail appliance store in Lawrence Township, New Jersey. We've been serving the community since 1935, 89 years in business. And in celebration of Women's History Month, this is March, Women's History Month, 3 generations owned by women. I have 2 fun facts to share with you about Mrs. G's. Many customers ask, how do we do it? How are you able to compete successfully against the big box stores? We're members of the largest buying group in the country, 3,000 members with $15 billion in buying power. But here's the fun fact. There's only a handful of this group of independent appliance retailers across the country that are 100% owned by women. Mrs. G's is one of them. Here's the other fun fact. We have 21 full-time employees and 3 part-time. And when I say family business, I mean family business. I'm Mrs. G's granddaughter. Managers Tom and Chris Gray are father and son. I have sales professionals who are brothers, Pete and Keith Forrest, and their father, Ted, retired after 35 years with Mrs. G. Pete's daughter, Abby, just recently started working with us, and we're so excited to have her. That's 3 generations there. How about that? Okay. We are so honored to sponsor this lecture on Drumthwacket at Morven, 2 historic properties that represents New Jersey's heritage and culture. At Mrs. G Appliances, we believe that supporting the arts and historic architecture is not only a way of giving back to the community, but also a way of enriching our lives and inspiring our minds. We're passionate about preserving and promoting the history and beauty of our community, and we are proud to partner with organizations like Morven that share this vision. I invite you to visit our beautiful store, meet our very knowledgeable sales staff, and see our wide selection of appliances that I promise will make your life better.
Thank you so much to our fantastic sponsors who really helped make this series a reality for us. It is now my pleasure to introduce our speaker for tonight's program, Chuck Johnson. And before I introduce him, I just want to say that the past 24 hours have been incredibly challenging for Chuck, which I know he's going to mention to you when he comes up to do his presentation. But we are so immensely grateful for him to being here tonight and doing this talk. Chuck enjoyed a 33-year-plus career in information technology working for Sears, then leading the IT team for the launch of Discover Card. His work in IT continued as he moved with MasterCard from Sears to Dean Witter and then to Morgan Stanley. After retiring and moving to New Jersey from Chicago, Chuck has enjoyed joining the docent team at Drumthwacket, having volunteered there for over 12 years. Chuck's ongoing interests are family, gardening, and traveling to as many parts of the world as possible. So please join me in welcoming Chuck Johnson.
If I look a little wobbly walking up here, that's because I am. Truth be told, I went to get a haircut for this August event tonight, yesterday morning. So if you know where that barbershop is on Nassau Street, I came out of there, I turned right, went down to the second crossover that you can reach, and stood there waiting for the light to say walk, which I did. Once it said walk, I took 3 steps into the crosswalk, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw this oncoming van coming. And I had about half a nanosecond to turn before, bam, he hit and laid me flat on the concrete. So When you get up in the morning, you never know what's going to hit you. Pun intended. So, long story short, the EMS folks took great care of me there, loaded me into the ambulance. I went to Princeton Hospital, spent 4 or 5 hours there, 5 hours there, and had all kinds of tests. They know more about my body than I do. And so, fortunately, the worst of it all was my back. But that's getting better day by day, as I like to say quite often. You just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and eventually you'll get there. So if you don't mind, when I hit the ground, I think some of the words I was going to use tonight got knocked out of me. So with your indulgence, I'm going to read from this script, and we will go from there. Thank you much. Both Greer and Joe have been so accommodating, getting me set up to be able to do this in my current condition, and my hat is off to both of Greer and to Joe here. So, good evening. I'm delighted to be, thank you. I'm delighted to be here at Morven, the former governor's mansion, to talk to you about our current governor's mansion, Drumthwacket. And I'm calling this presentation Drumthwacket's Influence on History. I'm going to guide you through the mansion similar to the way I give a tour, then there will be a Q&A session afterward. Drumthwacket is a Scottish Gaelic word for wooded hill. To pronounce the name Drumthwacket properly, you need to put your tongue between your teeth and say the word Drumthwacket. Give it a try, Drumthwacket. Yeah, very good, very good. You're much better than some of the tours I have. So the way in which Morven helped shape history has helped shape history. So too the current governor's mansion, Drumthwacket, has shaped and is shaping history. How? Well, it begins with what I call the story of 3 private owners. How? Well, it begins with what I call the story of 3 private owners who each in his own way managed to influence the history not only of Princeton, but of New Jersey, the United States, and walking on the moon. I call that being influential. Also, like Morven's history, Drumthwacket has been the home of many New Jersey governors. Becoming a governor's mansion was a process that unfolded over time. To start explaining how this special mansion influenced history, probably I'll just keep this in my hand. First, I need to talk to you about today what is called the Olden House. By doing so, I want you to understand how the Olden House played a very prominent role in making Drumthwacket become what it is today. So, tucked away, the Olden House can be found at the end of Drumthwacket's driveway, tucked near a grove of tall sycamore trees. It is an unassuming small white cottage, formerly known as the Thomas Olden House. It was built around 1757 and is one of the just few remaining homes built by the Quakers who moved into the Stony Brook area in 1685. An important event in the history of Olden House was that on January 3rd, 1777, after a triumphal fight with the British troops at the Battle of Trenton, General George Washington marched his worried troops towards Princeton. Why? It was important to protect and maintain control of the primary route between New York and Philadelphia, and General Washington was successful in doing so. At the conclusion of the Battle of Princeton, it is said that General Washington left some wounded soldiers at the Olden House to receive treatment. All of the Olden House history is interesting, but what is the connection between the Olden House and Drumthwacket? To explain the connection, I have to take you back into history more than 2 centuries. The Olden House is standing where it always has. It was built in 1757 by Thomas Olden, one of the 5 prominent Quaker families who began settling in the Princeton area in the 1690s. Then, in 1799, Thomas Olden's grandson, Charles Smith Olden, I keep looking up there and it's right here in front of me. I'm not sure why I keep turning my head. It's right here. Charles Smith Olden was born on that farmstead. For those of you in the audience who like history, 1799 was the year George Washington passed away. Also, during the Q&A session, if anyone would like to hear 2 special stories about George, I will tell you about the British sniper who had George in his sights, plus a separate story about his passing. Life in colonial America was not easy. Folks like the Oldens had to work hard and together to keep their farms productive. The list of responsibilities for children was lengthy, and the chores were usually determined by age. Young children would help by sorting laundry or sweeping ash from the floor using a turkey wing broom, while older children would tend to the fields and take care of farm animals. Young Charles was expected to help his parents by working the land, helping with farm animals, and assisting with daily chores. At age 11, though, Charles was enrolled in what is now called the Lawrenceville School, studying there until the age of 15, while also working at his father's store until 1824. His father, Hart Olden, was a wheelwright. Charles Smith was employed by the mercantile house of Matthew Newkirk in Philadelphia. Actually, that's a little soon. He worked there for 2 years before moving to New Orleans as a representative of the firm. He learned about commerce and became successful financially. Plus, he received a sizable inheritance from an uncle named Charles Smith, for whom he is named. He also married, now it's time for, he also married his second cousin, Phoebe Ann Smith. Then, together with his savings and inheritance, Mr. Olden decided to retire from the business, and he returned to Princeton with his wife, Phoebe Ann. The Olden house, once he arrived back in Princeton, he bought it with 40 acres of land, which was originally part of a 300-acre land obtained in 1696 by William Olden, one of the early settlers of what was then known as Princetown. Then in 1835, he and his wife Phoebe started having the mansion built. When it was finished, it is smaller than what you see today, being only as wide as the front portico with its 6 Ionic columns. Having built it, Charles Smith Olden was the first private owner of Drumthwacket. And as I mentioned earlier, there were 3 private owners of Drumthwacket before it was purchased by the state of New Jersey. I hope you will agree with me that the personalities and actions of these three private owners made the mansion become what it is today. Back to Charles Smith Olden. He was an avid reader, and we believe he got the name Drumthwacket from a book written by Sir Walter Scott entitled The Legend of Montrose, published in 1819. A mansion called Drumthwacket is referenced twice in that book. Drumthwacket's Greek revival style architecture likely came about from Olden having lived in New Orleans and having seen many Southern plantation style mansions. Olden echoed this style by having an Ionic 6-pillar portico built that leads up into the house. That type of architecture, the Greek revival style, including the colossal front portico, which was prominent in the South, but not so much in the East. Walking up the steps of the portico, entering the mansion, you are immediately inside a foyer with two large rooms on each side of it. The front section of the large room on the east side of the foyer was a formal parlor, and the back part was a room for his library. He built a wall with sliding pocket doors between the two rooms which divided them. The front part of the room was a morning room, and the back part of the room was his dining room. In addition, the mansion had 4 bedrooms on the second floor. I will talk more about the rooms in a bit. After he and his wife moved into the mansion, Mr. Olden became a gentleman farmer, a businessman, and also acquired more land. He involved himself in many community activities and offices, including becoming the treasurer and trustee of the College of New Jersey, now Princeton University, and then a state senator. In 1860, he became the 28th governor of New Jersey, which of course made him the first governor to live in Drumthwacket. When Mr. Olden passed away, he owned over 500 acres of land. To his wife, he bequeathed the mansion, 48 acres of land, and a large sum of money. He also granted close to 500 acres to numerous relatives. And that brings us to the second private owner, Moses Taylor Pyne. Why do I keep looking up there? Can anybody tell me that? Yeah. Second private owner, Moses Taylor Pyne. He grew up in New York City, but attended the Princeton University and then Columbia Law School. Mr. Pyne and his wife, Margaretta Stockton Pyne. Stockton? Ring a bell? Anybody here? And then here's her picture, and I'm sure the Stockton name is familiar to quite a few of you out there. Inherited a great sum of money from 2 relatives. One was his grandfather, Moses Taylor, who was very involved in the Cuban sugar trade and a longtime president of the Citibank of New York and more. The second person was Mr. Pyne's father, Percy Ringington Pyne, who was the president of the City National Bank, was a director of the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad, plus being a director of the New Jersey Zinc Company. At the age of 28, and having become a financier and an industrialist, he bought the residence from Olden's widow for $250,024. And at least me, and I think more docents at Drumthwacket wonder, what's the $24 for? Then as Drumthwacket's second private owner, Mr. Pyne, together with his wife, Margaretta Stockton Pyne, there she is, together with his wife, began planning how to transform Drumthwacket into a grand estate. It took more than a decade of planning, effort, and numerous financial expenditures to enact their plans. At the same time, Mr. Pyne's list of organizations to which he was involved is way too lengthy to cover during this presentation. But from among all of those, the thing that from which he derived the greatest pleasure was being invited in 1884 to join the Board of Trustees of Princeton University, of which he served for 36 years. It is said he never missed a meeting. He became one of Princeton's greatest benefactors and its most influential trustee. On the long list of his donations to Princeton University is giving the university 2 dormitories on Nassau Street called Upper and Lower Pyne. There were other buildings in Princeton with the Pyne name included in it. The Pyne Library was built in 1877, a sesquicentennial gift of Mrs. Rivington Pyne, Mr. Pyne's mother. When you go into the Drumthwacket later in the library, you will see a portrait of Mr. Pyne hanging on the library wall, which shows him dressed in an academic robe with Mr. Pyne, with the Pyne Library in the background. Mr. and Mrs. Pyne added 2 large wings to the mansion. The first wing was added in 1895 and is called the East Wing. The East Wing enabled them to bring the kitchen indoors and provide accommodations for their ever-expanding staff. It also allowed Mr. Pyne to reconfigure the large room on the east of the entry hall, knowing he would be frequently entertaining a sizable number of people. He removed the wall, which turned this large room into one large dining room. Then in 1900, they added the West Wing, which added space for a drawing room, a Gothic library, and a study. In the parlor, the front part was kept as a morning room. The back portion became a billiard room. Once the 2 wings were added, there were 12 private rooms on the upstairs level. I want to go back here, I think. This is how it looked before the wings were added, and this afterward. Residing on the property as a gentleman farmer, Mr. Pyne had cows, sheep, horses, a herd of deer, swans, and even peacocks. It is said that Pyne introduced black and white squirrels to Princeton. Anybody ever seen any of those? Which eventually escaped and shared their offspring all over Princeton and beyond. He hired a farmer to take care of the immense estate. Mr. Pyne expanded the Drumthwacket property to include almost 300 acres. Princetonians were welcome to stroll the grounds and visit the stables, the greenhouses, while strolling through the beautiful gardens that included walking paths, serene ponds, and bridges, a bowling green, and a lawn tennis court. On the lower level, he had a topiary lawn chairs made from evergreens. There were also multiple fountains. It was the era of the Princeton grandees. On those 300 acres, he established a dairy farm and added a carriage house. A house for the head farmer was built near the location of the previously built greenhouses. The Olden house, which originally housed the butler's growing family of 11 children, which became too small. There they are. So Pyne built a 3-story home for them. Then the Olden house was converted into an aviary for exotic birds, plus some unusual chickens, along with a few monkeys in his spare time, he oversaw the creation of the lawn tennis court, a bowling green, walking paths, and dammed a stream to create ponds. By 1905, Mr. Pyne had created his Italianate gardens located behind the mansion. The Italianate gardens. All the buildings he erected were in the Elizabethan Tudor style architecture. When you consider the addition of the two wings onto the mansion, along with the many interior modifications, plus all the alterations and additions to the property, Pyne turned Drumthwacket into an estate that surpassed the gardens and the residences of any house and garden that had previously been built in Princeton. Today, Drumthwacket property consists of 12 acres, and while the fountains in Mr. Pyne's gardens are no longer as they once were, visitors can still enjoy the beautiful Italianate and star gardens which capture the spirit of the grand era. We will view both of those in a bit. Now, meet the third private owner, Abram Spanel. And this is Mr. Spanel's picture. In 1940, at the onset of World War II for the United States, inventor Abram Spanel bought Drumthwacket. He was a successful scientist and inventor with over 2,000 patents to his name. He was a very generous and wealthy man, but his early life was not easy. Born in Odessa, Russia, now Odessa, Ukraine, in 1901, young Abram, later known as Abe, and his family fled Russia in 1905 because of religious persecution. They relocated first to Paris, France. By the way, there are 23 towns in the United States named Paris, just a little side note, before crossing the Atlantic to make a new life for themselves in Rochester, New York in 1911. Abe was 10. Mr. Spanel was a very industrious young man. As a teenager, his first job required him to deliver the daily newspaper to homes throughout Rochester, which enabled him to earn enough money to study chemical engineering at the University of Rochester. Spanel's career got off to a quick start with his invention of a vacuum-sealed garment bag, which led to the creation of his first company, the Vulcanizer Manufacturing Company, in the mid-1920s. Spanel earned his first $1 million before the age of 30. In 1932, Spanel formed a second company called the International Latex Company, or ILC. The engineers and seamstresses at ILC were experts in making products with a stretchy fabric called latex. Spanel's first latex product was a lady's swim cap. From there, he and his team of engineers invented numerous latex products, later marketed under the Playtex name, a division of ILC, in 1947. Here's some of the products that he put together with latex. In 1939, Spanel moved his company from Rochester, New York to Dover, Delaware. Then in 1940, he purchased Drumthwacket. When the United States entered World War II in 1941, Spanel and his engineering team turned their focus to inventing critical life-saving items such as the floatable stretcher to carry wounded soldiers from the battlefield to the ship much more comfortably. And that's this. It's kind of a hard picture to say, so I've added the labels there about some of the construction. Gasoline was rationed, so Spanel invited the engineering staff to work in what we call today the music room and to live upstairs in the mansion. He installed a dropped plywood ceiling with hanging fluorescent lights. Long days were spent working there in support of the war effort. In 1944, Spanel was recognized by the U.S. government for returning more than $1.5 million in company profits as a contribution to the war effort. In addition, the government of France named Spanel a Grand Officer in the Legion of Honor, which is one of the highest honors given to civilians by the French government. In 1947, the company, by then known as the International Playtex Company, split into 4 divisions. In 1965, the IOC Dover Division won a hard-fought contest to design the Apollo spacesuit that NASA used in 1968 to land the first man on the moon. There was somebody putting the spacesuit together. Think about his business journey. Starting with a vacuum-sealed garment bag, then specializing in latex products, starting with the ladies' swim cap, and eventually to the Apollo spacesuit. Paraphrasing Neil Armstrong's comment as he stepped onto the surface of the moon, Spanel's business journey into the latex world started with a small ladies' cap, but took a giant business leap by winning the bid for the Apollo spacesuit in 1965. At the time of his passing, he held more than 2,000 patents. Spanel sold the mansion to New Jersey in 1966. Spanel and his wife moved into the 3-story Butler's Lodge, which had been built by the Pynes. Once owned by the state of New Jersey, it took nearly 2.5 decades after the state of New Jersey bought Drumthwacket in May 1966 before the first governor and his wife moved into the mansion. In the meantime, Drumthwacket was added to the National Register of Historic Places on June 10, 1975 for its significance in agriculture, architecture, commerce, landscape architecture, and politics. What initiated the purchase of Drumthwacket by New Jersey? Well, Governor Richard J. Hughes decided that Morven would not be sufficiently large to house his family. Both he and his wife had been previously married and jointly had 9 children. In addition, Governor Hughes felt Morven could not accommodate the number of guests who would be attending the public entertaining he envisioned, not to mention the tents and the other equipment that would be installed each time a gubernatorial party was given. But the condition of Drumthwacket was in at that moment in history. It had to be updated. What needed to take place to get the necessary updating done? Raising a bunch of money. Around 1968, Governor Hughes began planning how best to move forward with Drumthwacket. 15 years after New Jersey purchased the mansion, near the end of Governor Burns' second term, I'm a little ahead of myself. The home was proclaimed the governor's official residence in 1981. Governor Keene, the 48th governor of New Jersey, 1982 to 1990, oversaw the creation of the residence in 1981. Governor Keene, the 48th governor of New Jersey, 1982 to 1990, as I said, oversaw the creation of the Drumthwacket Foundation in 1982 and the subsequent fundraising for the mansion's restoration, but never lived in the mansion himself. Governor Jim Florio and First Lady Lucinda Florio were the first gubernatorial couple to move into Drumthwacket, and they lived there full time. Then in 1982, the foundation was formed, and Drumthwacket Foundation was formed to act as the curator and preserver of the history of the mansion, the related loans, gifts, and acquisitions. The foundation is supported solely by private funds, meaning no tax dollars involved. Drumthwacket, now the official governor's residence, which today sits on 11 acres of land, about a mile or so down the road from here, also serves as the Museum of Furnishings and Art from the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. A full tour through the home provides a glimpse of life for those who lived in it, and possibly how current governors can use it. By getting Drumthwacket to this point, though, was no easy task. Why? Each time a private owner moved out of the mansion, they took all of their belongings and furnishings with them. For that reason and more, when New Jersey started to update the mansion, they had to find period-correct furniture to bring into the mansion. As a result, the foundation has since acquired numerous items of artwork and furniture, some of which are on loan, as well as acquiring permanent library collection. But that's not all. Drumthwacket's Italianate gardens needed work. So beginning in 1990, First Lady Lucinda Florio undertook the task of upgrading the gardens. Also, the Thomas Olden house was restored, turning its main room into a demonstration room in which docents can show fourth graders at 9:45, 10:45, and 11:45 on Wednesday mornings, teaching today's youngsters how life was back in the day. You know, a butter churn's there, spinning wheel, glowing coals in the fireplace, hearth, toys, etc. Also, the Olden house sometimes serves as a gift shop. Past the main room are also foundation offices. Now that we understand how the three private owners use the mansion to meet their needs, let's tour the rooms. I keep looking up there. Why do I do that? We will begin the tour of the mansion's rooms, beginning with the foyer. The foyer is where the governor and first lady greet guests who are visiting from all over New Jersey and beyond. When Drumthwacket was built in 1835, Governor Olden and his wife, Phoebe, welcomed guests just like it happens today, except the visitors back then arrived by foot or by horse and carriage. And of course, when it was built, the house including the foyer, was lit by candlelight. And as you view it today, size-wise and decor-wise, look at the door frames up there, the dental work up above, it looks pretty much the same as it did when it was built. However, the second private owner, Moses Taylor Pyne, made a few changes when he bought the mansion in 1893. He changed the flooring from pine to oak. Why would you do that? Maybe he didn't want anybody walking on pine. He also widened the staircase to the second floor, which was originally very narrow. The widened staircase leads to a Palladian window you can see on the first landing, which was added in the late 1890s. With our backs to the front door, we turn left and enter the dining room. From this photo, it is not hard to tell that although this is now one large room, it was once two rooms. Today, it is often used for state dinners, during which visitors can admire the multicolored floral chinoiserie pattern wallpaper that adorns the wall. When Mr. Olden constructed the house, this large space was built as two rooms. With a wall containing the sliding pocket doors that separated them. In this photo, back here, in this photo, we are looking from the end of the dining room toward the opposite end, which is next to the portico. And as I described earlier, the front portion of the room was a formal parlor. The back was his library. Additional signs that this was once two rooms include the structural support beam midway through the dining room. You can see that up there. The two fireplaces, two chandeliers, and two doors indicating separate entrances and exits for the two rooms. This is what you see when you enter the dining room from the foyer. These doors in this room were added when the east wing was built in 1895. One of the purposes of adding the east wing was to move the kitchen indoors and to add servants' quarters. We do not tour as docents the east wing, and I won't have you tour it either. The second private owner, Moses Taylor Pyne, removed the dividing wall with the pocket doors and created one large dining room. Mr. Pyne knew he would be entertaining a larger group of guests and adapted Drumthwacket for that purpose. The third private owner, Abram Spanel, put in the dividing wall and made the front portion of this room a smaller dining room and turned the rear portion of this room into his study. Much later, when New Jersey began rehabbing the mansion, they took out the dividing wall and made the dining room one large room as you see it today. So it was two and then one, and then two again, and now one today. What looked like windows at either end of the room are called jib doors, J-I-B, jib doors. The window sashes can be raised. The wooden panels on the bottom can be opened, which allows not only for adequate cross ventilation in the room, but easy access to and from the portico. This was very important for formal dining parties in a time when central heating and air conditioning were non-existent. In this photo, where we have been looking from the end of the dining room toward the opposite end next to the portico, this antique mahogany banquet table was made in the early 19th century. The table consists of 4 parts and was originally bought for Morven by Governor and Mrs. Robert Minor. They realized that the table was too large for Morven. However, knowing that Drumthwacket would one day be the governor's mansion, he had it sent there. Normally, the table is surrounded by Georgian mahogany chairs, completely hand-carved and polished, as you see there. On the table are Scammell service plates. Scammell was once located in Trenton. The New Jersey State China plate was made by Lenox, which was originally located in Trenton as well. It was patterned after a design done by First Lady Mrs. Ronald Reagan for the White House. And now the punch bowl. In the middle of the table sits a 2-piece sterling silver punch bowl and 2 silver candelabras, each holding 9 candles. These are part of a formal dining set made in 1906 by Tiffany and Company in Newark, New Jersey, for the USS Battleship, New Jersey. You will see additional pieces of this set displayed in the library. The punch bowl displays the figures of Lady Liberty and the goddess Ceres, resting on either side of the base, echoing the design of the New Jersey flag. Naval vessels were traditionally presented with elaborate silver service sets for use at special dinners, teas, and other formal occasions. The New Jersey state legislature appropriated $10,000, you do the math back then, for a silver service set of 57 pieces, which was presented to the ship in 1907. The punch bowl is decorated with symbols of New Jersey, the United States, and the Navy. It rests on a base designed to look like waves. Additional pieces are displayed on the sideboard of the dining room and in the library. Oh, come on. Keep up with me. Thank you. The 29 multicolor floral chinoiserie wall panels around the room were hand-painted especially for Drumthwacket. It took 4 Chinese artists about a year in the 1980s to paint them. The design consists of branches, plum blossoms, peonies, butterflies, bees, bugs, and birds. Don't you like that alliteration? In Chinese tradition, the plum blossoms represent strength and braveness, while peonies are representative of high office, prosperity, and wealth. Among the birds are magpies, which is a spring bird signifying hope in life, and of which some scientists say it is smarter than some mammals. And also the Chinese bulbul, a sign of good luck. An English mahogany tall case clock occupies the back corner of the room. It was constructed in England by George Guest over 200 years ago. There are 3 tall case clocks throughout the mansion. The room's feta carpet, it's spelled F-E-T-T-E but pronounced feta, was woven over a period of 20 years from 1910 to 1930 in China. It is named for Mrs. Feta, an American living in Beijing, China. She was a widow who formed a rug company to improve the working conditions for the local women. The rug is very rare because of its multiple colors and raised design. I said I wasn't going to tour the East Wing, but here's a glimpse of the first room of the East Wing when you go into the kitchen. We don't tour the kitchen, as I said, in all the food preparation rooms, but this is a brief glimpse of what you would see there. And so next we head for the parlor, which is across the hall from the dining room. Now we're back out in the parlor. As we leave we're back in the foyer as we leave, headed for the parlor. As we head there, we go by the atrium, which is near from where we will be heading to see the gardens, and then into the parlor. Here's a first shot of the parlor. As in the dining room, the parlor originally was 2 rooms when the governor and Mrs. Olden lived in Drumthwacket. When you are in the parlor, you will notice 2 fireplaces, different ceiling heights, and the more elaborate door moldings on one side versus the simpler moldings on the other. The room at the front of the house was referred to as the morning room because it was usually bright and filled with light. Mrs. Olden would begin her day in this room with the house staff discussing the day's activities. It was also the room where Mrs. Olden taught her Sunday school class. Visitors to the mansion would often be seated in the morning room to await the person being visited. Originally, the rear portion of this room was a dining room. Drumthwacket was built from wood, and as such, fire was always a concern. And for this reason, the kitchen was located outside. Meals were prepared in the kitchen located outdoors and brought into the residence through a small wooden door beside the fireplace, now which is a door leading to a lift for wheelchairs. When the mansion was purchased by Moses Taylor Pyne, he reconfigured this room, leaving the front portion of the room as a morning room, but turned the rear portion of the room into a billiard room, as I had said. For a drawing room, he turned the room we will see next, which today we call the music room, but he made it his drawing room. When Abram Spanel purchased the mansion, he turned the parlor into one large drawing room. It wasn't until the mid-late 1800s in Princeton when gas fuel was introduced for lighting. Therefore, it was very helpful to have a looking glass like this one to help provide lighting in a room. There it is. On the far wall, this beautiful looking glass, it's a convex mirror and is also known as a fisheye or bullseye mirror because of the curved glass which bulges outward. Note the four elegant arms, girandole arms, which extend outward from the looking glass. Each arm would have held a candle. When the candles are lit, the light reflects or bounces off the curved glass to illuminate the room. If the glass was flat and not curved, the mirror would only reflect an image of the lit candles and not reflect the light back into the room. In this parlor, there are 3 secretaries, also called writing desks. It usually has a hinged desktop and a bookcase with small compartments inside of the doors for storing paper, ink, and pens. This is the first secretarial desk. Made in 1765, the Chippendale-style mahogany secretary was made in Philadelphia and is over 250 plus years old. The second secretarial desk is original to the home and holds a pair of 19th century copper luster beakers that belong to the Olden family. Glass door secretaries were very much in vogue beginning around 1910, give or take. The third and final secretary in the room also belonged to the Olden family. It is known as a portable secretarial desk because rather than a piece of furniture, it providing a writing surface that one could use when traveling. A note was found inside that desk which read, quote, "This desk was used by Governor Olden to write to President Lincoln." I view this kind of a writing desk back in the day as our laptop today. There are many wonderful antique oriental rugs throughout Drumthwacket. The carpets in the parlor are called Tabriz carpets because they were made in the city of Tabriz, which is in the country of Iran. The dyes were usually made from natural items such as flowers, vegetables, and spices. Descending now into the music room, through that short flight of stairs, it's the first of 3 rooms added to the western side of the home by Drumthwacket's second private owner, Moses Taylor Pyne. We call this the West Wing. And here's a view from the other end of the room. As a reminder, this 1900 wing addition also includes a magnificent library as well as the governor's study, which you will see. Today, with its ornate plaster, paneling, and a beautiful glass grand piano, it often serves as a backdrop for special exhibitions of works by New Jersey artists. It also is used by the governor and first lady for entertaining and receptions. Today, the music room looks nothing like it did when Spanel lived at Drumthwacket. After purchasing the mansion, Spanel removed much of the elaborate plasterwork and installed a drop ceiling, transforming the elegant room into a research and development laboratory. During the restoration of the music room in the 1980s, 2 murals were found hidden under the drop ceiling. Just one mural was in good enough shape to be restored, and it holds a special place of honor here in the music room. The octagonal mural pictures Euterpe, one of the 9 muses in Greek mythology. She is the muse responsible for music, song, and lyric poetry. The portrait of Albert Einstein was painted by Samuel Wolfe and was featured in April 4, 1938 cover of the Time magazine. Einstein's image appeared on Time's cover 6 times, including the December 31, 1999 issue, in which he was named the Man of the Century. One of Princeton's most famous residents, Einstein taught and performed research at nearby Institute for Advanced Study from 1932 until he died in 1955. Physicist Leo Szilard, a close friend of Einstein, who also worked at the Institute, was invited by the Spanels to live in Drumthwacket for over a year in the early 1950s. It was Szilard who drafted and urged Einstein to sign a 1939 letter to President Franklin Roosevelt warning about German nuclear weapons being researched. The letter is considered one of the most important letters written in the last 100 years. In the vestibule you're seeing here, between the music room and the library, is a Matthew Egerton tall case clock. Crafted in 1997, the clock is over 220 years old. As we push open the heavy oaken doors of the library, if you are most like of my tour group folks, you are immediately struck by the impressive large Caen stone fireplace facing you from across the room. A large block of Caen stone, likely formed in France over 150 million years ago, was brought to Drumthwacket to be carved on site by the European stone masons under the watchful eye of Mr. Pyne. The fireplace works exceedingly well. The library was a favorite room of Mr. Pyne. Looking at the fireplace, above the mantel is an inset containing a Pyne family crest dating back at least 700 years. There were no surnames back then. Immediately below the crest is a banner with a Latin inscription, "In a storm I flourish." Above the fireplace is a larger inscription which reads, "Mortality lives in books, immortality lives in the soul." In the portrait banner next to the fireplace, you see Moses Taylor Pyne in his academic robe in front of Princeton University Library named after him. Mr. Pyne had been an undergraduate at Princeton and not long afterward became a very active member of the board of directors. In fact, he never missed a meeting during his 36 years on the board, as I had said. There are several buildings in Princeton that have the Pyne name as part of their name, which gives us an idea of his importance to the university. When Mr. Pyne died, classes at Princeton were canceled, and Nassau Hall rang the bell in his honor. The walls of the library were built using dark oak paneling from a church school located in Oxford, England. By the way, if you don't know, Oxford University was originally started as a small meeting group in 1066, which is older than the Inca Indians who were established in the 13th century. It is lined with numerous bookshelves to house Pyne's extensive collection of books. Oops, wrong one. You can also see more of the silver service set that goes with the punch bowl that you saw earlier in the dining room. You can see it back there in the corner. Mr. Pyne's original books now reside in the Princeton Library. Mr. Pyne was very concerned about the possibility of fire destroying his prized books collection, so he had the room built with concealed interior metal sliding doors and interior window shutters to protect the room. In addition, he had the exterior walls lined with thick brick walls 2 to 3 feet thick. Carved oak doors lead to an unrestored gentleman's water closet. Probably can't see that here. No, you can't see that here. Drumthwacket was one of the first homes in Princeton to have an indoor bathroom. The library ceiling is made up of canvas panels shaped like bookmarks and book plates depicting the marks of medieval artists. On bookmarks throughout the library are pine cones and pine trees in honor of Mr. Pyne's name. In the library is a large oak partner's desk built around 1900. It is original to the room. It houses 2 complete working sets of doors and drawers and hardware that 2 people can comfortably use at the same time. On the desk are normally several framed pictures, usually of Moses Taylor Pyne with his granddaughter Agnes. Agnes's wedding and the famous New Jerseyan, Paul Robeson, are often pictured there now. You can see Paul in that little picture right there. Thomas Edison is a famous New Jersey inventor of, among other things, the incandescent light bulb. Technically, he didn't invent the light bulb, but he made one that lasted by maintaining a better vacuum inside the bulb and had an improved filament and one that could better handle the electric current. To get there, he and his laboratory folks tested more than 3,000 designs for bulbs. Alexandra Volta, the term volts named after him, is an interesting fact. I never knew that until I studied Edison. In fact, Edison patented 1,093 inventions and thus was given the nickname the Wizard of Menlo Park. He believed in hard work and said, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." He improved upon Alexander Graham Bell's telephone, and when the phones came to Princeton, Mr. Pyne had the first one, the candlestick phone. Thus, his telephone number was 1. Okay, now we're moving on to the study, the last room in the tour on the main floor. So you're welcome to see the study, which looks out onto the Princeton battlefield where on January 3, 1777, George won a triumphal battle against the British. It is small. It is a small horse-shaped room with a stone fireplace located directly opposite the semicircular windows. I call this a mini Oval Office. It is believed the study was originally built separated from the residence for Mr. Pyne's privacy. A different partner's desk is nestled within the curved glass windows. Within the curved glass window room extension, it's a beautiful oval-shaped English walnut partner's desk usable by 2 people facing each other. The top of the desk is made from decorated leather and is glass covered. On the other end of the study, it is a fireplace adorned with carved stone imaginary figures known as grotesques. Since you are here in Morven, many of you are likely to know about who this statue is of, Richard Stockton. He was a prominent Prestonian who represented New Jersey in the Continental Congress and signed the Declaration of Independence in 1776. He was later imprisoned by the British, during which time his home was occupied by the British General Cornwallis. As you know, Morven was the New Jersey governor residence from 1954 to 1981. And Mr. Stockton was an ancestor of Moses Taylor Pyne's wife, Margaretta Stockton. The study is the end of the West Wing and the last room on our tour. We will exit the mansion at this point. So we go to the gardens. Since 2005, trained master gardener volunteers have worked around the mansion to maintain and develop the historic Drumthwacket property. They weed, plant annual borders and seasonal bulbs, prune and shape shrubs, and evaluate plantings in response to disease, insect pests, and environmental conditions. Master gardeners also serve as garden docents, explaining the history of the property as well as the goals and the accomplishments of the master plan. That said, as you were walking up the mansion, you likely spotted some of the results of the diligent work our master gardeners perform. Their work certainly enhances the curb appeal of Drumthwacket. Here are a couple of examples, and only a couple, close to the mansion. Here's one, and here's another. The first garden I will show you is called our Star Garden. It only consists of one star, but we think all of our gardens are 5-star gardens. As you see, the first star garden, in the first star garden slide, the aerial view dates back to Moses Taylor Pyne's era. If you were to see our star garden in better weather than today's, it would look like this. Perhaps with a few different plantings. The big star shaped outline has a large planter in the middle. Here's a close-up shot of the two sides. You see there. Our second garden I'll show you is our largest garden, which is an Italianate garden. An Italianate garden is a formal garden which was perfected in the Renaissance Italy, possessing a well-manicured look. As well as its beauty, it also allows us to go down to our frog pond, which I will discuss later. It is sufficiently large that I can only show you part of it in this presentation. An Italianate garden is a formal garden with a design perfected in Renaissance Italy, as I have just said, 1350 to 1600. An Italianate garden possesses symmetry and a well-manicured look. We have been fortunate that the horticultural students and their professors from Rutgers University have come to Drumthwacket to lend a helping hand to our gardeners. Our Italianate garden is split into two halves by a path that separates the two sides. What you see on one side is a mirror image of it on the other side, which is our symmetry. From standing outside, I'm going to wait on that. Standing from right outside the mansion atrium you saw earlier in the tour, we start walking into the Italianate garden. On the way, we pass the sculpture. Now it's time for that. Made by who? Yes, exactly. Live from multiple places by J. Stewart Johnson, entitled Between Appointments. As we start down the path into the garden, depending on the time of year, you can see some of the plantings and foliage strategically placed throughout the garden. As you let your gaze go forward, you see what looks like a sculpture. Once you get there, we find it's a sundial. And depending on the time of year, whether it's daylight time or not, it works well. The slide shows us, this slide shows us the look from where we walk to get to the sundial. So if you're at the sundial, you can look back to where you walked from. You can see the mansion there in the background. In a different photo, we then notice that there is a rock wall. Where's that photo? You can't see it. No, you can't see it in here, not sure why. You know, there's a rock wall behind the sundial with a staircase on each end of the wall. One needs to take one of the staircases to get back and forth to the frog pond. As soon as you get down the staircase, you'll notice that there is a concrete bench. Where are you? Come on, concrete bench. What happened to it? There is a concrete bench there, and that was installed a couple of years ago. And as the picture that I thought I had here showed that the birds like it as well. You can just let your imagination run with that. Okay, walking through the garden, one can find many small sculptures. I began to show you though. Here are 4 of them featuring these charming young ladies. There's also an even smaller sculpture of a cute little dog. Next, we head for the frog pond. Guess why it's called a frog pond? There's the bench. There it is. Why is this called the frog pond? Anybody hazard a guess? There's frog ponds in it. There's frogs in it. And the picture you see here is not an updated picture of it. Since this picture was taken, a ring with 4 floodlights attached to it encircles the water spout, and a concrete walkway in and out of the pond has been installed so the frogs can traverse it if they wish. The pond's picture is scheduled to be taken again this summer. One more important facet of the Master Gardeners perform, they also serve as docents for the Drumthwacket program, Discover Drumthwacket program, which welcomes New Jersey school children who tour the mansion and explore the gardens. The highlight of the day is a visit to the frog pond, where Master Gardeners talk about the cycle of the frogs and the role they and the pond play in the garden. Educating school children in this way is just one more way that Drumthwacket influences history. With that statement, I am concluding my segment of Morven's Grand Home and Gardens and Mansions, and it opens up to a Q&A session if you wish.
Thank you so much, Chuck, for that, tour. I know you usually give tours, in the mansion, so we're so grateful that you could take us with you. We're nearing the end of our time tonight, so I can probably only take 1 or 2 questions. So does anyone have a burning question they would like to ask? No? All right, we have 1. We'll take 1.
So I was up at the barn company in Ringo's last fall, and they had a barn that's been in storage spread out, and they were power washing it and fixing up some of the joints and things, and they said it was going to become the visitor center at Drumthwacket.
It's true. They are building what you can view for the moment as a huge barn with wide open spaces inside to do any number of things, including probably putting the tour groups together.
You know where that's gonna go?
Yeah, if you can picture yourself outside the atrium and you look to the right and down a little bit to this direction to the right, you can see, right now it's a big dirt pile with all kinds of equipment around it as they are getting developed. It's supposed to be done by the middle of summer.
All right, we'll take one more.
Were the original 300 acres contiguous to the property? Or
Oh, yeah, it was all contiguous. For the most part, until a couple of roads were built, but originally it was all right there, near the Stony Brook area. Yeah, yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much. If you have any other questions for Chuck, we can, I'm happy to share, if you're okay with it.
Sure, absolutely.
You can send questions to me and I can share those, same with the folks that we have online tonight. So I just want to thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much, Chuck, for a wonderful presentation.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I have to add to that. Thank you for this audience. They were so wonderful to talk to.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we hope you'll join us next week for Virginia's Governor's Mansion. Until then, have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you.
There was a